A few days ago, I was watching one of our fights, including me doing some fights, and something kept bothering me. The reports weren't bad, the damage wasn't terrible, the mages were doing exactly what the mage supposed to do, but somehow it feels like they weren't impacting the fights the way they used to be. And the weird thing is, if you played Call of Dragons during the first few seasons, you probably remember a completely different game. Back then, if somebody told you they were a mage player, you immediately know that what this means. Big circles, big AoE, massive value, people stacking together, everybody sitting on top of each other. And every time those skills wounded, the reports look beautiful. But recently I've been start asking myself something. Are AoE mages actually weaker? Or did the battlefield actually change? Because I don't think those are the same question. And that's where the things start getting interesting. When I look back at old fights, one thing stands out immediately. People used to play differently, a lot of differently. Most armies were basically moving as one giant blob. Infantry sat in front, mages sat behind. Everybody know where everybody was. The battlefield was predictable, and predictable battlefields are exactly what AoE damage was. Because AoE damage or area of effect damage isn't really about the damage. It's about people making positioning mistakes. The more players stack together, the more stronger area of effect damage becomes. The less they stack, the less value you get from AoE mages. It's just simple, but then I start watching recent fights and I notice something. And the something, I'm going to show some reports. Now, I'm sending some reports to my farms, but yeah, I start noticing that the very good performing legions, like for example Lilith, I know some people are going to say this is not that bad, it's actually fighting against IMFS, but at the end of the day, this is not the average report I'm getting. I'm getting like 40-45k reports. And if you open and I check it out the battle zone, you're going to see here we have one infantry, here we have one infantry, we have some cavalry. Okay, cavalry is actually decent on giving merits, but we're not having that stuck-at infantry no longer. We're not having the infantry that people sent in the front lines. People right now try to get value from the infantry just by going over the players, and they're getting pretty decent value because I don't have that developed infantry legion, but right now the infantry legions are just sending their infantry and they get crazy good reports just by sending their infantry. And as you can see, maybe this is some, how to say it, something like not that happened that much, like 3 infantry tickets here, but yeah, you get the idea. It's just how the things are, and I actually start noticing that because some of my AoE mages didn't perform the way they should be. Players are no longer giving free value, and at last not as often, and that completely changed the conversation. Think about modern infantry players for a second. Those guys have become incredibly annoying. I mean that's as a compliment. A year ago, you couldn't often predict where they going to be. A year ago, you're going to know that infantry was basically a meat shields that just filling your reports. Everybody was extremely happy to be a mage main. Today, good luck. 1 second they're here, next second they blink, they split, then they approach from another angle, they disappear, they suddenly are behind your line. The battlefield feels chaotic now, and that's exactly the problem. area of effect mages love predictability. You want to know that in this situation, it's not only for AoE mages, but for AoE mages, is more like essential to have this thing, this predictability, because you're counting on hitting multiple legions. Till if you have a single target legion, you don't care that much. Modern infantry creates chaos. A chaos is much harder to hit. That's why that's when I start wondering, maybe we're still evaluating mages using old battlefield assumptions. Because here's something I think many players miss. Area of effect damage doesn't happen in a vacuum. The hero can be exactly the same. The artifact can be exactly the same. The pet can be exactly the same. But the player behavior change, hero value change. The moment you change the way you're playing, the moment the enemy change the way he's playing, the value of your hero is start be different. It can be go up, it can go down. And yeah, one of the heroes, to be fair, that is not performing very good, crazy good, is actually my Lilia. I have no issues with you, Ming Grumar. I have no issue with Bertrand Tocher. Right now I have issue with Lilia, I have issue with Thunderlin, I have issue with Musiang. This is Awakened Heroes. This artifact is like level 4. If I go and on my Lilia, this artifact is level 5 Example Edition. So it's not like we're not having that good. Obviously the Sand Lizard is still not developed. I'm putting effort right now on my Sand Lizards, but I think you get the idea. It's basically the same heroes, even boosted, to be fair. Okay, I don't have crazy decorations, but I have the artifacts, okay? So yeah, but still, if the player behavior change, its value of the hero also change, and players' behavior has absolutely changed. I have seen more infantry players actively hunting mages than before. Before, you basically sent your Madeline and that's all. You know you're going to fill your hospital. The moment you fill your hospital with your infantry, you don't heal the infantry. Right now, people may not heal mages, but they're going to heal infantry. The value of the infantry just skyrocket with the bastion system and all these other things, but still. Not necessary because infantry become broken, but because people learn it. They understand where the value comes from. And if the value comes from the mage, kill the mage. Simple. And that sounds obvious, but it creates a completely different environment than Season 1, 2, and 3 give you. Because in the Season 1, you have Madeline with Garwood. Season 2, you have Goris Kogo, which I can say is one idea, even though right now I believe they're squishy. Season 3 is Danfel with Mogro. Again, meat shields. From Season 4, you have Kuma and Li Quan. Season 5, you have Joran with Ewanir. I'm sorry, but Generation 4 and 5 infantry are absolutely wild. And honestly, then I noticed another problem. And honestly, this one surprised me. Infantry doesn't just survive longer. It survives longer when being dangerous. That's a huge difference. Because older generation often feel like punchbacks. Today, not really. You have Generation 4 infantry. You have Generation 5 infantry. Event infantry heroes. Gore still refused to disappear from the battlefield. Even I actually use him as a commander. And suddenly you're not hitting soft targets anymore. You're trying to burn those massive walls of survivability, and that's where AoE starts feeling awkward, or AoE mages, because AoE damage is amazing when multiple targets are available. But what happens when one incredibly tanky target, it's the actual problem, not the equation changes. Now the equation changes, and it's not only that it's problem, but at the same time it's not sitting on the same position like it was back in the days. It's not sitting on the same position. This is where people usually bring up the Sand Lizard, and honestly, they're not wrong. Sand Lizard absolutely help. I've been using it, I've been seeing the reports, the extra damage matter, the pressure matter, the execution matter, but here's the question that keep coming back to me. If we're already needing additional tools to finish targets, something that we didn't actually need back in the days, doesn't that tell us something about the battlefield itself? Maybe, maybe not, but it's worth thinking about because every time I see a Sand Lizard discussion, I feel like we're treating the symptoms instead of asking why the symptoms exist on the first place. Why we have to take care about this crazy counterattack the infantry are having. I mean, back in the days, nobody was talking about the counterattack. Even when the Gorish Kogu actually come, still not crazy stuffs about the counterattack. But from generation 4 and 5, things change. And that's where my opinion starts shifted. Not completely, but enough to make me rethink some things. I still think AoE mages are good, very good, especially in the massive fight, especially when players make mistakes, especially when armies are stuck. And here I actually can have a value from the mages, because here you have to move around the castles, which make you easy target for a blink play, but at the same time is keeping the enemy stuck at that one place. In the same time is keeping you stuck at that one place. So so you know, there is some conditions where the army is just stuck because there is no other way around. None of the, but yeah, especially when the armies are stuck, none of that changed. Now to change is how often those situations actually happen. And that's a very different discussion, because value isn't determined by maximum potential or what one hero can actually do. And that's why I'm not huge fan of reports, because you know, this is some specific conditions that may never appear in this game, and you're watching of this report, and you're making some crazy, people are making some wild suggestion from this. Value is determined by how often you reach that potential, how often you can execute your area of effect damage. And lately I feel like opportunities are become harder to find. And as I already mentioned, it's basically places like this where the people just have to move around the castles, and there is places where they stack together and you can get some good value in situation like this. Then I start comparing something else. What if instead of spreading damage across multiple targets, you simply remove one target faster? That sounds boring, it sounds less exciting, it definitely creates a smaller screenshot, but strategically, I'm not sure it's worse anymore. In fact, I think there are situations where it actually better, because one dead target creates certainty. AoE creates possibilities, and the more mobile the battlefield becomes, the more certainty starts looking attractive. Because if you're not certain you're going to do something and you're just counting on the possibilities, things are not actually going in the good direction, especially against players who know how to reposition. And I think everybody actually learned this thing with the time. So where does that leave mages? Honestly, I don't think they're dead. I don't think focused damage automatically replace area of effect damage. I don't think infantry suddenly wins everything. But I do think the battlefield has evolved, and whether the battlefield evolves, the value of the heroes evolves with it. The biggest realization for me wasn't that AoE become bad, it was realizing that I was looking at AoE through season 2 eyes, or basically what we're used to get from this AoE fights at the end of the day with the seasons, our first impressions. And maybe that's a mistake. Maybe the question isn't how strong are area of effect mages, Maybe the better question is how often doesn't today battlefield actually allows area of effect mages to be area of effect mages? Because those are two completely different questions, and honestly, the answer might change how you look at mage investments, mage pairings, and even future hero releases. And that's just what I've been noticing lately. I'm curious if you're seeing the same thing. Do you think area of effect mages are losing value? Or do you think players simply got better at playing around them? Let me know, because the more reports I watch, the more I feel like we're playing different games that was like an year ago. So I'm Burgas, thank you very much for watching this video. It's just my 2 cents over the AoE mages and what I think. I have tons of reports in general, this just Bastion reports. But yeah, at the end of the day, let me know in the comments below. I wish you a great day. Don't forget to hit one like on the video, subscribe, become a member if you want to directly support my channel. I wish you a great day, and yeah, see you in the next video.